Welcome to podcast Sarah and Michael.
Welcome in, everyone. I'm Michael.
And I'm Sarah. We have a really intense one for you today.
Yeah, intense is definitely the word. I mean, at 1:59 a.m. Thai time, the United States military was quite literally minutes away from executing this massive coordinated strike on Iranian targets.
Right, like the bombers were ready, the target lists were locked in.
Exactly. And then at exactly 2:00 a.m., the most powerful military apparatus in the history of the world was brought to a screeching halt by, of all things, a single post on Truth Social.
It's wild. And what stopped the strike wasn't some sudden military revelation either.
No, it wasn't. It was actually 3 Arab neighbors who realized their own backyards were about to catch fire.
Yeah, and the geopolitical reality of the Middle East just fundamentally shifted in the last 24 hours because of it.
So before we go any further, we need to be crystal clear with you, the listener, about what we're doing here. Today's date is May 19, 2026.
Yeah.
And the mission of this deep dive is to completely unpack that sudden 11th hour pause on the U.S. strike. We're also going to explore the specifics of the latest peace proposal that's being fiercely negotiated right now behind closed doors.
Right, because there's a lot on the table. And we should mention, our sources for this deep dive are recent detailed reports from Thai media outlets. They've been tracking the minute-by-minute developments of this whole crisis.
Which is super helpful for getting a clear timeline. And, as always, just a quick reminder for you, our goal is to objectively report the facts, the official statements, and the varying viewpoints found directly within these sources.
Absolutely. We're not taking any political sides here. Left, right, U.S., Iranian, doesn't matter. The focus is strictly on helping you understand the source material itself.
So we have to begin with that 2:00 a.m. reversal. President Donald Trump had ordered a full-scale military strike on Iran, scheduled for today, May 19th.
But then he halts it.
Right, he halts it. And according to his own statement on Truth Social, this wasn't some internal U.S. policy shift. It was the direct result of urgent pleas from key Arab leaders.
Yeah, and the sources explicitly name the 3 pivotal figures who intervened here. We're talking about Qatar's Emir Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, and the UAE's President Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan.
So heavy hitters.
Very heavy hitters. These leaders basically sent an emergency diplomatic flare up to Washington.
And their core argument was that, well, serious negotiations are currently underway.
Right. They argued that these back-channel talks actually have the potential to result in a highly acceptable regional agreement.
It's like calling off a demolition crew when their hands are already hovering over the detonator, just because the neighbors ran over and said they've got a buyer for the house.
That's actually a perfect way to put it, because if that house gets demolished, the shockwave completely destroys the neighbors' foundations too.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, they all share the Persian Gulf with Iran. They are right in the immediate blast radius, both economically and physically.
Right, of a full-scale regional war.
Exactly. These nations have spent the last decade trying to diversify their economies away from just oil. They're building massive tech hubs, global tourism centers.
And a massive U.S.-Iran war just shatters all of that overnight.
It really does. So when they tell Washington to wait, they're speaking from a place of existential economic self-preservation.
But the pause comes with incredibly strict conditions. Trump's non-negotiable line, according to the reports, is that Iran will not have nuclear weapons.
Yeah, he made it very clear.
He made it clear to the public and to Tehran that this is not just an open-ended ceasefire. He warned that time is of the essence and threatened that nothing will be left of Iran if this specific deal fails.
And he's backing that up by keeping the military apparatus fully primed.
Right.
The sources note that he explicitly ordered the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, General Daniel Kane, to stand down the immediate attack, but to remain completely prepared for a massive strike the second these talks collapse.
So that is the leverage Washington is bringing to the table, negotiating with the credible immediate threat of overwhelming force just hanging in the air.
Which brings us to the actual peace proposal. Like, what exactly is supposedly so promising that it stopped a war?
Because, I mean, the U.S. and Iran do not have formal diplomatic relations. They aren't sitting across a table from one another shaking hands.
No, not at all. The sources indicate that Pakistan is acting as the crucial middleman here.
The mechanics of this are wild when you think about it. You have the Pakistani Interior Minister, Mohsin Naqvi, meeting directly with the Iranian Parliament Speaker, Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, in Tehran.
Yeah, Pakistan is literally physically ferrying the diplomatic messages back and forth between Washington and Tehran.
And Iran's foreign ministry spokesperson, Esmail Baghai, actually called out the absurdity of this whole diplomatic dance.
Oh, he definitely did.
He pointed out that the U.S. is publicly and loudly rejecting Iran's proposals, yet behind the scenes, they continue to quietly send amendments and specific conditions through Islamabad.
It's a classic dual-track strategy, right? Publicly, the U.S. demands, as reported by the Iranian media outlet Fars, are totally uncompromising.
Right. They have a 5-point list.
Yes. And the most aggressive stipulations demand that Iran dismantle its infrastructure to the point of keeping only one single nuclear facility operational.
Wow. One facility.
Just one. Furthermore, the U.S. is demanding the complete transfer of Iran's highly enriched uranium to the United States.
Just to clarify for the listener, when we talk about highly enriched uranium, we are talking about the core material required to build a nuclear weapon.
Exactly.
If Iran ships that stockpile out of the country, they physically lose the ability to assemble a bomb, regardless of what facilities they have left.
It completely resets their nuclear breakout time from weeks to years.
But Iran's counter-demands are equally sweeping, aren't they?
Oh, yeah. According to the state news agency IRNA, Tehran wants a total end to the war on all fronts. And they specifically insist that this includes the fighting in Lebanon.
Okay.
They're demanding a complete withdrawal of U.S. troops from the entire region, formal war compensation, and the immediate lifting of the U.S. naval blockade.
Wait, Sarah, I'm looking at these two narratives, and they don't match up at all.
No, they don't.
Iranian news agencies like Mehr are complaining bitterly that the U.S. is offering no concrete concessions and demanding things they couldn't even win on the battlefield.
Right.
But at the same time, we have insider sources claiming the U.S. just offered to unlock tens of billions of dollars and allow some supervised nuclear activity. Someone is bluffing here. How do we, as the listener, reconcile this public posturing with the private reality?
Well, we really have to look at the domestic audiences both governments are playing to. The Iranian media must project strength. They cannot broadcast to their citizens that they were buckling under American pressure.
Right, that makes sense.
And the U.S. administration similarly has to project total dominance to its base. But the leaks from insider sources reveal the actual mechanical movement of the negotiations.
You mean the unfreezing of the assets?
Precisely. The high-level sources indicate the U.S. is quietly softening its maximalist stance. They are reportedly offering to unfreeze 25% of Iran's assets that are currently locked in foreign banks due to international sanctions.
25%? That's tens of billions of dollars.
Exactly. And mechanically, this wouldn't just be like pallets of cash dropped off. It usually involves moving funds into restricted escrow accounts in third-party countries.
Heavily monitored, right?
Very heavily monitored, to be used specifically for non-military goods. Furthermore, the U.S. is reportedly willing to allow some peaceful nuclear activities to continue.
But with a catch, I assume.
Always a catch. It would only be allowed if they are strictly under the supervision of the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency.
Okay, so Iran is obviously pushing back, arguing that 25% isn't enough and demanding all their assets be released.
Right.
But the very fact that they are haggling over percentages of frozen accounts
Right.
rather than ideological absolutes proves that actual negotiations are happening.
When you are arguing over the escrow mechanics of unfrozen billions, you are in the realm of a tangible deal. You just need the time to iron out the math.
Which explains exactly why the Arab leaders were so desperate to secure this pause.
Exactly.
But if the initial demands started out so incredibly far apart, surrender your nuclear material versus abandon the entire Middle East, why didn't one side just walk away weeks ago?
Well, according to our sources, the answer lies in the crippling economic pressure suffocating both nations right now.
We have to trace this back to late February, which is when the sources note that U.S. and Israeli forces initiated the attacks that kicked off this broader war.
Right. And the immediate global reaction was a massive spike in global oil prices.
And the geographical epicenter of that economic shock is the Strait of Hormuz.
Yes. Let's actually visualize the strait for a second, just so everyone has the picture.
Yeah, it is a narrow strip of water right between the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman.
Yeah.
At its narrowest point, it's only about 21 miles wide.
Which is tiny.
It is. But in peacetime, approximately 20% of the world's total oil exports pass through that tiny choke point. You cannot simply route global shipping around it.
No, you really can't.
Right now, because of the conflict, Iran is actively refusing to let ships pass through. Simultaneously, the U.S. has blockaded Iranian ports to completely suffocate Tehran's ability to export its own oil.
It is a mutual, devastating economic chokehold. Trump is facing intense pressure both domestically from consumers and internationally from allies to reopen the strait.
Because you simply cannot maintain a thriving, stable global economy if a fifth of its energy supply is trapped behind a military blockade.
And Iran is feeling that exact same squeeze. Their president, Masoud Pezeshkian, posted on X that while Iran will never surrender or abandon what they consider their legitimate rights, these negotiations are absolutely necessary.
That is a remarkably revealing statement from an Iranian president.
It really is. To publicly admit that negotiating with the U.S. is necessary is a blunt acknowledgement of the profound, unsustainable economic pain the sanctions and the naval blockade are causing inside the country.
You see that same pragmatic, almost begrudging tone from the Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araqi.
Right. Yeah.
He publicly attacks the U.S., calling their behavior contradictory and excessive.
Yeah.
But then he pivots and states that Iran is engaging in these talks out of a responsible perspective.
He is telegraphing to his people, like, we don't trust Washington, but we have a fundamental responsibility to stabilize our collapsing economy.
So what does this actually mean for the average person listening? Is this highly publicized diplomatic showdown less about ideological victory and more of a desperate panic scramble to get the oil flowing again before the global supply chain completely cracks under the pressure?
Absolutely. For the average listener, this isn't just an abstract map with moving pieces. The price of oil dictates the cost of shipping.
Right.
And the cost of shipping dictates the price of your groceries, your consumer goods, and your basic cost of living. Both Washington and Tehran know that if this blockade drags on, the economic damage transitions from painful to catastrophic.
So the political survival of leaders on both sides depends on finding an off-ramp.
Exactly. But increasing bank accounts and reopening shipping lanes means nothing if the region itself is literally on fire.
Which it is.
Right. And this is where the bilateral peace deal hits a massive reality check. Because even if Washington and Tehran agree perfectly on the oil and the nuclear supervision, the broader region is currently engulfed in proxy wars.
These are the wild cards that could collapse the entire negotiation. The sources explicitly point out that despite a temporary ceasefire agreed upon back on April 8th, the fighting hasn't stopped.
No, it hasn't. It is just decentralized into daily, sporadic attacks across multiple fronts.
Let's look at the Gulf front. We are seeing continued drone attacks targeting the very same Arab allies who just begged Trump for this peace deal.
Yeah.
Saudi Arabia recently reported intercepting 3 drones that crossed into their airspace from Iraq.
And the situation in the UAE is even more alarming. They reported a drone strike that caused a fire at the Baraka Clean Nuclear Power Plant.
A drone strike on a nuclear plant.
Yeah. Now, to be clear, this is a civilian power project designed to help the UAE transition away from fossil fuels. Anwar Gargash, a presidential advisor in the UAE, strongly condemned the strike.
I would imagine so.
He called it a dangerous escalation by terrorists and proxies. The fire didn't cause radiation leaks or casualties, but the psychological impact of a drone successfully hitting a nuclear facility is massive. It threatens the entire security narrative of the Gulf.
And the sources clarify who is launching these strikes. We are dealing with heavily armed militias in Iraq and the Houthi rebels in Yemen.
Right.
These are independent actors, but they are ideologically aligned with and militarily supplied by Iran.
Which exposes the fatal flaw in a purely bilateral peace deal. Like, can Iran actually control these groups?
That's the big question.
If the U.S. and Iran sign a treaty tomorrow, unfreeze the money, and reopen the strait, will the Houthis in Yemen actually stop firing drones at commercial shipping? Will the militias in Iraq stop targeting infrastructure?
That ambiguity is exactly why the Gulf states are terrified.
It is.
Trying to sign a neat, orderly peace treaty right now feels like trying to safely land a commercial airliner while half the passengers are actively trying to dismantle the engines from the inside.
That's a terrifying image, but yeah. And those passengers dismantling the engines have their own localized grievances that a U.S.-Iran document doesn't solve.
Right.
The complexity just multiplies when you look at the Lebanon front. According to the reports, Lebanon was dragged directly into this broader war on March 2nd.
This ignited when Hezbollah fired a massive barrage of rockets at Israel, which was in direct retaliation for Israel's assassination of Iran's supreme leader.
And the human cost on that specific front is just devastating. The sources cite the Lebanese health ministry, which states that over 3,020 people have died in Lebanon from Israeli strikes.
Wow.
And what is truly shocking is that over 400 of those deaths have occurred since the April 17th ceasefire supposedly went into effect.
It really proves that these diplomatic ceasefires are often just theoretical exercises that the combatants on the ground completely ignore.
Oh, completely. Just over the recent weekend, Hezbollah fired approximately 200 missiles at Israeli forces.
200.
Yeah. Israel, in turn, continued its strikes, killing 5 people on Sunday, including 2 children.
And the military reality on the ground has been permanently altered. Israel currently maintains a 10-kilometer ground occupation in southern Lebanon.
Right.
They formally agreed to a 45-day ceasefire extension on May 15th, but the reality is that violations from both sides are absolute daily occurrences.
And Iran wants the U.S. to guarantee an end to the fighting in Lebanon as part of this new peace deal. But Washington doesn't have a magic switch to turn off Hezbollah or force Israeli troops to withdraw.
And as if the regional proxy fighting wasn't a dense enough web, the sources outline how localized incidents are instantly becoming global diplomatic crises.
Yeah, this part is wild. Australia is currently investigating a highly volatile situation where 11 Australian citizens were illegally detained by Israel.
These citizens were part of an aid flotilla heading to Gaza, and they were intercepted by Israeli forces in international waters. This isn't just a minor footnote. It adds a massive layer of diplomatic friction. You have Australia demanding the humane treatment of its citizens, pulling another Western nation into the fray.
And the U.S. needs its global allies aligned right now, and instead it's watching its allies clash over intercepted flotillas in the Mediterranean.
When you zoom out and look at the sheer volume of these moving parts, drones launching from Iraq, Hezbollah missiles flying from Lebanon, aid flotillas being intercepted in international waters, and 20% of the world's oil trapped behind a blockade in the Strait of Hormuz, you realize the immense fragility of what Trump and the Arab leaders are trying to accomplish.
Absolutely. A simple agreement between Washington and Tehran might be completely insufficient to turn off the sprawling, decentralized machine of this war.
So let's take a step back and distill all of this for the listener. The core insight from today's sources, the real summary of why this is all happening, is that President Trump paused a scheduled massive attack on Iran at the 11th hour because Arab allies pleaded for time.
They pleaded for time because a highly specific deal, brokered through physical back channels in Pakistan, is genuinely on the table.
Right.
It's a deal that hinges on the mechanical unfreezing of billions of dollars, implementing strict IAEA nuclear supervision, and ending the mutual chokehold on the globally vital Strait of Hormuz.
But the shadow hanging over this entire diplomatic effort is the sheer chaos of the proxy wildcards.
Yeah.
The decentralized fighting in Lebanon, Yemen, and Iraq threatens to derail everything, regardless of what documents Washington and Tehran eventually sign.
And the reason you, the listener, need to understand the mechanics of this standoff is because the outcome directly dictates global economic stability. It dictates the energy prices that fundamentally alter the cost of everything you buy.
We are all deeply economically tethered to the waters of the Strait of Hormuz.
They really are.
It puts the fragility of our global supply chains into perspective. We've covered a massive amount of ground today, unpacking the how and the why behind these headlines.
A lot of moving pieces.
But we want to leave you with one final thought to mull over on your own.
Okay.
If securing peace right now relies on untangling a massive web of independent proxy militias, daily drone strikes across borders, and global economic bottlenecks, is a traditional, orderly peace treaty between two centralized governments even possible anymore?
That's a great question.
Or have we entered an era where these types of wars never truly end? They just transition into heavily armed, highly expensive staring contests.
It is a sobering question, especially when you remember that the demolition crew hasn't gone home.
No, they haven't.
They are still standing right there in the yard, fingers on the detonator, just waiting to see if the neighbors can actually close the deal.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We'll be back next time to untangle whatever happens next.